So it looks like the Mascot Tower residents and owners will be paying for repairs. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian Heiser here. It's a stormy Sunday afternoon here in Brisbane. I've got my stein of coffee and I thought we'd have a look at an article discussing Mascot Tower and repair work. Who's going to be stung with the bill? Okay, so let's have a look at this article from ABC. Mascot Tower unit owners to foot bill for repairs, prompting calls for better consumer protections. Now, you have to understand, this building is 10 years old. It's 10 years outside of the, well, no, I think it's a 7-year period that the builder has to provide protection or insurance. There's usually a 1 or 2 year period for defects liability, and that's under the contract, and that's consumer protection for 7 years. So now it's been 10. So it doesn't really seem like enough, does it? It does not for something this big, this expensive, and this complex. And let's not even talk about the fact that builders can just phoenix their companies. But let's have a look. Owners of apartments in the Mascot Towers development will be left with a hefty bill to repair structural damage as the building is too old to fall under warranty, with property experts calling for better consumer protections. Residents were forced to evacuate the 10-storey Sydney building on Friday night after major cracks appeared in its beams. Temporary building props were installed in the car park earlier this week due to the rapid deterioration of cracks within a primary support beam, residents were told. Under New South Wales law, building defects are covered for under warranty for 6 years. 6? I thought it was 7, Parker. After completion of a development. Oh, okay. That'd be 6 years. It depends. Is completion practical completion, which is when they can occupy the building, or is completion after the end of the defects liability period? Because that's an interesting question I raised there. Stephen Goddard, spokesman for the Owners Corporation Network, an advocacy group for owners in strata schemes, said owners of apartments in the decade-old Mascot Tower development were no longer covered by the statutory warranty period, would now be left with a hefty bill. Consumers have nowhere to go in these sorts of situations. There's nobody for them to sue. There's nowhere for them to turn, Mr. Goddard said. Yeah. Here we go. People have more consumer protection buying a fridge than $1 million apartment. Oh, do they? Do you have? I guess, in some regards. The Owners Corporation would now pay for the cost of repairs to the building by raising strata levies, he said. Well, okay. They should have a sinking fund. So the owners should have a sinking fund to pay for ongoing repair and deterioration of the building. They should be prepared for this. They should be. But Mr. Goddard said 80% of all new apartment buildings were constructed with structural defects. 80%. Many of which do not appear until the 6-year warranty has passed. I need to look up that statistic because that sounds horrific. Anybody looking to purchase a building less than 10 years of age is foolish because the defects will not have surfaced, he said. Don't buy anything less than 10 years old. You never buy off the plan. You'd never buy off the plan. It's unsafe to do so. He said, adding the buyers should not assume that modern apartment buildings have been built to code. Yep, definitely. And people were leaving comments asking about what I meant by procurement. And, I mean, you've got, say here, you've got Mr. Builder. Oh, you can't see that diagram. I'll do it over here. Mr. Builder here. And under the builder is the architect. Under the builder is the certifier. Under the builder is the structural engineer. And up here is the developer. So the people here that are checking, or should be checking, are employed by the builder because it's design and construct procurement. What do you think that could cause? What issues could arise out of that? Let me know in the comments. Mr. Goddard, who is a strata lawyer, said the High Court had recently confirmed that developers and builders do not owe owners' corporations any duty of care because owners' corporations do not exist at the time of registration of the plan. Wow, that is just BS. That is just BS. I need to look that up. So because the Owners Corporation doesn't exist when the plans were registered at, I'm assuming with the government with regards to the survey registration, they don't own a duty of care to them. The duty of care should be ongoing to the next buyers. That's what I was always taught at university. That just because a buyer accepts a, they want to bend the rules themselves and they assume that liability, it's irrelevant because you're still liable for the next buyer or the next one assuming that duty of care. But I think it's probably just contractually. Yeah, I mean, this is a mess. These type of things, this is where the market is failing, okay? This is where the whole leave it up to the invisible hand, I see it failing, because these things are much too complicated. We need to look at other ways of dealing with this. And Rachel had one suggestion where only allow developers to sell a certain portion of the property. They need to hold on to a portion of them for a period of time and rent them out to ensure quality. And then they're liable for a portion of the ongoing maintenance of the building. Maybe that's an idea. Maybe that's what we have to get to, because this is just getting crazy. It's happening so much. So he called on the New South Wales Parliament to create a statutory duty of care to better protect customers, and said so far there's been no political incentives for governments to do so. Most of our parliaments are on some sort of junky hit when it comes to the building industry, he said. The more they help the builder build, the more stamp duty they get, the more council and water rates come in. Well, yeah, you're right. We saw in Victoria how the decline in property values and sales has affected their budget. And you know what the Labor government there, what Andrew's solution is? Just raise up taxes. That's it. The structural problems in Mascot come 6 months after 3,000 residents of the Opal Tower at Olympic Park were evacuated from the building after major movement was detected. So, buildings become toxic to buyers. Mr. Goddard said the implications for owners in these buildings could be ongoing. Yep. The building will become toxic, just like Opal, where you won't be able to sell out of it because people know of the structural defects, he said. For many years, ever-increasing property prices have wallpapered over the issue. We're now seeing owners confronted with the possibility that their investment may be lower than their outstanding mortgage. Yes, we will. I mean, I look at that. That's not normal. An apartment currently for sale in the building is unlikely to sell as a result of the evacuation. Well, yes, that's true. MGM Properties principal real estate agent Michael Zallis has a one-bedroom apartment in Mascot Tower on the market for $740,000. $740,000 for a one-bedroom shitbox? Come on. Wow. Oh, it's unlikely to sell. Diddums. Sorry. $740,000 for one bedroom. That's the size of my little office here. Probably. With the laundry coming off there. That's $740,000. There's like $5,000 worth of plaster and timber in this thing. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. Obviously, I don't think anybody will be in a position to commit to buying a property with a building that's got problems. Sorry. Mr. Xalis said gaps in the strata system meant there should be annual checks by certifiers to ensure building structural integrities. Okay, here's the problem, mate. The certifiers don't have the capability to assess the structure. So you're going to have to get structural engineers out there to assess the building. And depends on what are you going to check? Just a rudimentary visual inspection? Are they going to look for cracks or other things? Are they going to start x-raying? Are they going to start doing, core samples? That's an ongoing cost. That is an ongoing cost. I'd say before we jump for that, before we add that yearly cost to these body corporates, we need to get a more rigorous process where the certifiers, the structural engineers, and the professionals in the process are free to act impartially without fear of losing future work. That's what I'd suggest. And maybe this issue is just coming because we've privatized our certification system. Maybe that's what it is. It needs to be addressed. We need to look at it. So, guys, I'll bring up the video again. Where is it? The Sherwood report? Oh, I'll find that later. But nonetheless, we need to look at the issues and how to address this. The certification problems in Australia are causing these issues. That's what my money is on. Just the way these buildings are procured, the way they're built. Because just the responsibility, it's dodgy, and you see this when you work in the industry. We've seen it all the time. That's why I'm at a point now in my career where I prefer dealing with other professionals than developers and shonky people. Anyway, I think there will be a lot more scrutiny on the construction side of buildings now. So building inspectors will be doing thorough checks on buildings prior to making any recommendations, he says. Yeah, well, they should have been doing that before. I don't think so. I think you're being a bit naive there, honestly. There are a number of buildings that I know that there's been no checks, and only when something does happen that all of a sudden they've started getting engineers to do reports on buildings, he said. Well, yeah, that's it. Probably because they're not paying enough. Probably because it goes back here to who's hired by whom, guys. That's the problem. So I think as part of any strata now, there should be an introduction to make sure there's a certifier or an engineer's report done on an annual basis. Okay, I understand where you're getting from, but it's kind of a waste of money. Okay? It's just more paperwork and costs where you need to allow the engineers. Here's the thing, you need to have, if you want, sure, have your privatized engineers. Here's the solution. Have your engineers working for the builder or working for the developer, but also have a third party, and I hate to say it, that are engaged by the statutory authority to go and do a check. And much more than is actually, where they do, random checks of the building certification or this. You need to bring it back. I hate to say it, because then that conflict of interest, that risk of losing future work disappears, and that's always going to be present. And there's going to be room for corruption. There's going to be room for blackmails. I mean, how do you know? In these buildings, they're not just slipping them an extra $5,000 to the structural engineer, go and sign off this, or you didn't see this, or controlling when they have access to the site. Because if you're difficult, you don't get any more work. You don't get any more work. Okay? So if you don't play ball and play with the team and bend the rules, you lose work. So you got to think about that, guys. It's easy as an employee to take these perspectives, but you've got to realize when you've got 15 people working for you, depending on you to bring that money in, you got, there's 3 more jobs lined up, money's getting a bit tight, or they're not paying you on time. All of these things weigh in. So that's, we need to look at different ways of approaching this, because we're going to see more and more and more of this happening. And they're all 10 years ago. They're all from the boom. So apartment expert and columnist Jimmy Thompson said many new buildings seem to be constructed to lower standards as builders and developers attempt to cut costs. We all know that every new apartment block in Sydney has problems of some sort, most of which can be fixed. Common problems include water leakage and lack of fire protection, Mr. Thompson said. Major structural defects were much less common, but it was hard to put a finger on it, especially when they happen outside the statutory warranty period. Warrant. I'm working on a deadline, guys. You're lucky I'm getting a video out today. Mr. Thompson said, prospective apartment buyers need to do their due diligence to make sure the developer is reputable before buying. Yeah, okay, sure. That sounds all good, mate, but it's BS. Okay? Because there's no way doing a due diligence on the Opal Tower developer or on the developer of these ones would have identified this. Would have identified these structural issues. Are they going to provide you with, if you're going in there to buy these buildings, are they going to provide you with the information to ensure, where did you have a clerk of works on site? They won't, they'll look at you funny. Let me know if you hear the thunder in the video, guys. Thumbs up in the comment. Are they going to provide you with that information? That's what you need. It's to do with how the building is procured and the relationships there. And the consumers don't even know about that. So doing your due diligence on the developer is irrelevant. You need to do it on the actual building itself and how it was procured. So, and for those who own in buildings that are less than 6 years old, ensure the entire development has been thoroughly inspected for defects. Okay, but that doesn't matter. That, in another way, that doesn't matter as well, because if the person inspecting the defects is working for the builder, they could have a conflict of interest, or they can just ignore doing defects. What happens is, as an architect, if you do control the contract between the developer and the builder, you do the defects, the builder won't get their final payment until all the defects have been rectified, and you'll even hold on to a portion of that money for 1 year afterwards for the defects liability period. Maybe, here's another idea, you need to hold on to a portion of the funds for the next 5 years, or insurance for any defects for the building for the next 20 years that the builder has to pay for. But then, is that going to drive up the cost of these buildings? Maybe that's just what people need to start doing. So Premier Gladys, I'm not even going to try that, sorry, said the Department of Fair Trading would investigate the cause of the structural damage at Mascot Towers, and the government would do everything in its power to hold whoever was responsible to account. Miss Bergeclan conceded more needed to be done to ensure consumers, given the large number of people living in strata developments. Yes, you do. We're doing everything we can to support all residents in these circumstances, and most importantly, trying to get on the foot to ensure that these type of situations don't arise in the future, she said. Well, no, you haven't implemented anything from the Sherweir Gold report. Not a thing. It's 2 years old. You haven't implemented a thing, so no, you're not doing it. You're lying. Okay, this is bullshit. She's lying. No, sorry. Sorry, Premier. Don't trust you. Let's have a look. Let's have a look here at the Mascot Towers and just what's in the context, what's surrounding this area here. Because the first thing I see, and this is Google Earth, when was this taken? 2018, okay, there's a crane here. Okay, you can see the crane there, guys. So something's happening. Something's happening. How do we know? How do we know there wasn't neighboring construction damage that occurred? We're going to have a look at here. You've got the airport link tunnel going underneath. You can see here, right near. Could that have caused an issue? Let's have a look. Look at these things. Hang on. I've got to make sure I talk to the microphone. 1 sec. I'll move it over here. So what do we have? There's some construction work there. You got the rail tunnel underneath. That looks like an empty site. What's happening there? So yeah, I mean, there could be a few things happening around the site that we can't really see in those photos that could be affecting the building that we need to be aware of. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining me for this episode. Let me know what you think. I've got very little confidence in anything the government's proposing on what they're saying. This is going to happen more and more, and I feel sorry for people that are bought in these apartments, because really they're just starting to, the mainstream, normal people are starting to discover just the level of, I'd say, corruption, one way or another, that exists in our construction industry. We're starting to see that come through shoddy workmanship, cutting corners, profit motive first, and calls for due diligence and yearly inspections are just going to be band-aid solutions. Putting in the due diligence is about the developers throwing it back onto the buyer and is hoping that the market will find a solution. I'm not confident that it can, because it hasn't, because the time frames are so big. The people who buy in here first will bear the burden of this investment forever. It's not going to, the market won't self-adjust. Well, who will remember who the developer is? I want to find it out. I'm actually going to start mapping this information for consumer issues. You know, I'll do a construction map like my freedom map. We'll look at that later. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining me today. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you all again tomorrow. Bye for now.